Well, 2020 was sure fun, wasn't it? I thought it would never end. But now we're into 2021 and I'm going to be making my annual predictions mostly about Apple. I say mostly, of course, it's all about Apple. That's pretty much all we do now anyway. And most of it's probably not going to end up happening. Let's begin. First of all, huge shout out to Mr. Nick and Sweeney who put together that intro for me, made with Apple Motion as well. And another big thank you to Randy for making the music and the intro sound effect. And I have cool friends. They're gonna be on the podcast. So if you're not subscribed to the Tailosive Tech podcast, stay tuned. We got stuff coming. But in regards to what I'm most looking forward to with Apple this year, I'm hoping that 2021 could be the year we finally put the death to the rumors of AirTags. They've literally been referenced in iOS code since 2019, and yes, I'm well aware that in my last 2020 predictions video, I thought AirTags were going to come out, so this can just be a recurring gag, you know, it'll be me in 2050, be like, I hope AirTags come out this year, but nah, a man can hope. Maybe Apple's just delaying it simply because of the pandemic, and they figure people aren't losing very much stuff these days, so maybe, you know, if the cases go down or something, they'll start announcing AirTags, but that's on my list. Also, 1 to 2 types of new AirPods. I don't think we're going to get new over-ears in 2021. I know, many of you are probably expecting a cheaper, more affordable version of AirPods Max to launch, but I'm not because Apple has never actually lowered the price of AirPods ever. I mean, they announced them in 2016 for $160 and they never got cheaper. It just, in 2019, they became $200 and then when AirPods Pro came out, they're $250. And along the way, people kept expecting, well, maybe next year they'll make a cheaper pair, and they didn't. It took the HomePod like 3 years to get a cheaper version, and that's what I compare the AirPods Max more towards, so I think there might be a cheaper version in the future, but not too soon. I think in 2021 we're going to get AirPods Gen 3, which are going to have design characteristics pretty similar to AirPods Pro, but without the rubber tips and without active noise cancellation. Probably start at around $200, and they'll have wireless charging and sound okay and have decent sound quality, but just not noise cancellation, so they won't be great for flights, which most of us aren't taking many anymore anyway. So AirPods 3, and maybe towards the end of 2021 we could get some refreshed, updated AirPods Pro. I don't think necessarily they will be a major design overhaul. It will most likely just be, you know, improved noise cancellation, maybe some better battery lives, or maybe the incorporation of a U1 chip or a H2 chip, just kind of a spec bump with AirPods Pro, and regular AirPods will get a bit of a design refresh, but AirPods Max, $550 throughout the year. And the only time I would slightly recommend someone get them is if they were planning on buying a Mac for college and they can get them for under $399. Then I would say, okay, somewhat doable, but don't pay $550 for AirPods Max. Hopefully there's like a permanent price cut this year. That would be nice. Also, later in 2021, we should be getting some new iPad Pros. This will be the first time iPads are adopting a display technology that is not LCD. Yeah, literally everything since the first iPad has just been an LCD display. You know, it's gotten a lot better over the years, but it's still been LCD. Now it sounds like we're only a couple of months away from mini LED coming to the iPad Pro, which should allow for better contrast ratios, better dynamic range, and very confused how they're going to make the switch to OLED a year after that. But yeah, we haven't really actually seen mini LED on any Apple products before. A lot of people think that the Pro Display XDR is a mini LED display, but in reality it's more of a heavily customized LCD. It's not technically mini LED, but it has a lot of the same technologies. You know, they're obviously not going to be able to miniaturize that type of hardware and stick it into an iPad. It requires a whole new manufacturing process to actually achieve mini LEDs of that size and thinness. So I imagine we'll see an A14X chip on that iPad Pro, probably still going to be rocking the 2 cameras plus LiDAR on the back. And some of these reports have even indicated that the mini LED iPad Pro is only coming in one size, just the 12.9-inch iPad, which is a little weird. Maybe this is Apple planning an iPad Pro Max of sorts, but either way, iPad Pro is my favorite Apple product currently, so seeing how Apple can make it even better, of course, I'm very curious about, and I'm just really hoping that at some point, even if it's not 2021, Apple could move the Face ID sensors to the longer side of the iPad instead of the shorter side, especially with so many people using it with the Magic Keyboard anyway. It just makes sense, but they'll probably make that mistake again. Apple, if you want to move Face ID and you feel bad about it because some people use the iPad in portrait mode, then just keep it portrait portrait mode built for the 11-inch iPad Pro, but on the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, go ahead, move it to the longer side, because I feel like 90% of the time people using the 12.9-inch iPad Pro are using it in landscape, not portrait. But feel free to disagree with me in the comments below. However, as much as I love the iPad Pro, it feels like it's kind of already peaking. Like, there's not a whole lot of things I would change, and I'm not even sure if mini LED is going to be a convincing enough argument to get me to upgrade my 2018 iPad Pro, which is still doing great. However, what I am very much interested in upgrading in 2021 is my iMac. My iMac Pro just turned 3 years old, and I hate to bring this up, but it is starting to show a little bit of age. It's not bad. I'm still editing all my videos on it and doing all my live streams on it, and it gets by fine. But, you know, impressive that after 3 years of shoving 4K at 60 footage on this thing every single day and exporting 2 to 3 videos on it, the fact that it's holding up at all is pretty impressive. But I have noticed, especially after reviewing that M1 MacBook Air, a little bit of choppiness in Final Cut editing and sometimes having to wait a little bit longer for the timeline to load. So I very much am ready to make the switch to Apple Silicon. It just sounds like Apple Silicon isn't ready for me, because I need more ports, and the M1 chip, only with that one Thunderbolt controller, is only able to support 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, and I need like 4. It would be nice if there was even more than that, but with Apple Silicon in 2021, I think we're going to see most of the lineup transitioned, with, in my opinion, probably the only Mac without Apple Silicon by the end of this year being the Mac Pro. I think that maybe in a couple months we'll see a 24-inch redesigned iMac that looks like an iPad Pro on a stick, and maybe launch that alongside the 13-inch MacBook Pro with 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports and M1 X chip or whatever. And then maybe later in the year they'll unveil the 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1T or something even fancier with mini LED, and alongside it also launch a 32-inch full-size redesigned iMac, and that will have the best of the best Apple Silicon available at the time, probably going to be outperforming a lot of the Intel configurations of the Mac Pro. And that larger sized redesigned iMac, that's what I'm eyeing, because personally 27 inches for my desktop monitor is about as small as I'm comfortable going, and I don't want a 24-inch iMac. As cool as it may look, I want, you know, more out of my screen, and I messed around with a few 32-inch monitors in my time to know that yes, I would like a 32-inch display, and if there is an all-in-one design that looks like an iPad Pro and has these groundbreaking specifications with awesome silicon inside it, and probably it's going to run silently because it barely needs to use the fan, I'm very much ready to swap out my iMac Pro for a newer iMac. And after 11 years, come on Apple, we are due for an iMac redesign. It is honestly offensive. You know, I'm going to go to Tim Cook's house, knock on his door, and be like, "You offend me, sir." Just kidding, Tim. I wouldn't do that during the pandemic. Once the cases go down, yeah, you can expect to see me there. And when it comes to other wearables, I think that there's a lot of pressure on the Apple Watch this year to do something different with the design. I know we've been talking about micro LED for years, and the display tech always feels like it's 3-4 years away, so I don't even think we're going to get micro LED this year. But the Apple Watch needs something. Maybe if they made it more squared off so it could blend in with my iPhone and iPad design scheme so well, and probably the redesigned iMac is going to have kind of a squared off edge design as well. And the Apple Watch is kind of the outlier now. It's like the one device that's still rounded off, and I've seen a few concept images of how cool it could look if they made it thinner and more boxy on the edges. There are bad ways of doing it. I've seen a lot of bad concepts, but I've also seen quite a few good ones. And personally, with the Apple Watch SE in existence now, I feel like that's what pretty much everyone should be buying. If you don't have a Series 4 or newer, then the Apple Watch SE is what I'm going to recommend to everybody. And if you have a Series 4 or newer, I'm just going to tell you to keep it, because the Series 5 or the Series 6, in my opinion, did not justify upgrading from the amazingness that was the Series 4. And in 2021, if they come out with the same design as before and it just has one new health sensor or slightly better battery life or a slightly brighter display, if it's another S year, and I feel like we've already had quite a few S years, the Apple Watch is going to feel very old and traditional, and I guess some people are fine with that, but I'm just going to tell everyone to get the SE as cheap as possible. Hopefully there's some more discounts on it later in the year. And when it comes to iPhones, I know that's what most of us all want to talk about, right? I think 2021 is shaping up to be the biggest, most disappointing iPhone launch in a long time, because we've been spoiled between the iPhone 7 and all of its changes, and then the iPhone 10, biggest iPhone upgrade ever. And then 2018 should have been an S year, but because they diversified the iPhone 10 so much and gave the XS Max and the XR, it made it feel like more of a major year. And then then the 11 series with all of its camera improvements and battery life improvements, followed by the 12 lineup, which has a huge number of changes, OLED becoming standard, the new design, and new form factors. There was lots to talk about with the 12 lineup, and I think now, knowing that they can't really diversify the lineup very much, 2021 is going to be the most redundant, kind of unimpressive iPhone upgrade year, probably since the 6S in 2015, because it's going to be the same form factors as 2020, same displays, 5.4 inches, 6.1 inches, 6.7 inches. We'll probably get 120 hertz ProMotion on the Pro lineup. If we don't, I'm not upgrading, and I'm not joking there, I mean that. And it's not to say that 120 hertz is like I will die if I don't have it. It's not like a must-have feature, it's just that my 12 mini is so good, and anything else they can think of adding would not justify me upgrading, in my opinion. So, I love my 12 mini, but the only thing that will make me feel like it's not a good enough iPhone anymore is 120 hertz, because that's something I notice and appreciate. I love it on the iPad Pro, and I know a lot of you don't care about it, but that's why there's other iPhones that don't have 120 hertz. Those are for you. Probably the biggest headlining feature to maybe anticipate for the iPhones this year is Touch ID coming back. Seems like on Twitter there's whole arguments about Face ID versus Touch ID, and I'm sure the pandemic and with more people wearing masks, Apple has got to be considering bringing it back. Though I don't think they're going to go too innovative with it. There's a lot of people expecting it to go underneath the display. Personally, knowing Apple, I think that's going to be too complicated and expensive for them. I know other companies can do it, but this is Apple we're talking about here, okay? They want their profit margins to be a certain thickness. And because of that, I think that they're just going to do what they did with the iPad Air 4 and put Touch ID in the power button, and then average consumers can be like, hey, I remember Touch ID, I want to go back to that, and they'll have the option to unlock their phone. With Touch ID, you won't have to use it if you don't want to. It's just going to be the first Apple product with 2 different biometrics to go off of, and then, Apple's going to brag about most secure smartphone in the world. But camera-wise, I expect, slight incremental improvements. We already got night mode on every camera. We got 4K at 60 on every camera. We've got extended dynamic range. I feel like there's very little room for the iPhone camera to grow other than just slightly improve the sharpness. And battery life might be just a little bit better with the A15 chip, but honestly, I don't expect it to be leaps and bounds better than before. And they can't really brag anymore about 5G. They've already added that to the lineup, ultra wideband for everything. So hopefully that means we don't have to hear more about it at Apple keynotes, but no promises, they will not skip a chance to talk about 5G. And personally, I know you guys always want to believe otherwise, but I don't think we're going to get a smaller notch. After the 12 mini came out, and we all swore for the longest time that the notch had to shrink in 2020 because the mini was going to be smaller, and yet they kept the notch the same size on the mini. Notch ain't going anywhere. I think Apple's just going to keep it until they can eliminate it entirely, and I think that's fine, honestly. I'm using phones without notches, I'm using phones with notches, and I don't really notice that big of a difference. You don't really look at that part of your phone very much anyway, and yeah, sounds like all year we'll be talking about whether or not one of the iPhones will be portless or not, and how stupid that is, and then in a few years we'll get used to it, and the rest of the market will do it too. So that sums up my predictions for 2021. I'm also looking forward to Quadruple U DC 21, where we can get some iPadOS improvements, hopefully some refinements on macOS Big Sur, and hopefully fixing some of the widget issues with iOS 14. We'll save that for another video though. I appreciate you all watching, and I hope to make 2021 the best year for Tailosive Tech ever. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.